In late 1966, Joan Miró travelled to Japan for the first time. The thought, art and culture of the Far East fascinated Miró throughout his life.
Since I was young, I have been very interested in Japanese prints, and I was very impressed by the way in which the Japanese reacted to a drop of water, a pebble, a handful of sand, things that do not seem to have any meaning.
The first sign of this interest can be found in an early work. Miró painted a portrait of a friend of his, another painter, and added a Japanese woodcut in the background. Oriental tradition does not differentiate between poetry, calligraphy, and painting. At times, poetic text and picture reinforce one another. This also happens in Miró's poem paintings. Calligraphy is a specific form in Japanese art. The painter gives up colour to concentrate on the force and gesture of the brushstroke. Japanese script uses ideograms, which are the graphical representation of an idea. Miró's vocabulary of signs, with its schematic shapes, recalls ideogram script. In 1961, Miró began 3 large canvases on a blue background.
Do you know how Japanese archers prepare for competitions? They begin by getting themselves into the right state, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling. It was the same thing for me. After lunch, I would simply look at what I'd drawn. For the rest of the day, I would prepare myself internally. And finally, I began to paint. First the background, all blue. But it was not simply a matter of applying color like a house painter. All the movements of the brush, the wrist, the breathing of the hand, all these things played a role.
Space is another typically Japanese concept, and one which is very important in Miró's work. Empty space heightens the evocative power of the brushstroke. In Japan, there is a very simple, very brief form of poetry, haiku. Some of Miró's works recall it. As in haiku, Miró aims to attain the maximum poetic intensity with a minimum of resources. Miró's attitude to creative work brings him close to the Japanese philosophy. Like the Japanese masters, he attached importance to concentrating before starting to work and produced highly evocative forms.